Hey guys, welcome to my channel, Cameron Haven. Today I'm just going to do a quick review of Star Wars The Last Jedi.
Let the past die. That's the only way to become what you were meant to be.
Darkness rises, and light to meet it.
So just before we get into my actual review, I just want to talk about my history with the Star Wars franchise. I love the original movies. I think they are some of the best science fiction action adventure movies ever been made. They are very much a huge part of my childhood. I just really love all the characters in it. For me, the Star Wars characters have stood the test of time. Luke, Princess Leia, Han Solo, Chewbacca, Yoda. They've introduced some of the most iconic characters in pop culture history. I really like the prequels. I can totally understand how it's gotten such a huge backlash from fans over the years, and I still feel like these movies are very problematic. However, I still enjoyed them for what they are. I would totally not disagree with anyone who felt like the prequels ruined their childhood or felt like these movies were a huge disappointment to them. So with Force Awakens, with the recent new Star Wars movies that Disney have made, since acquiring the rights to the Star Wars franchise, I just want to say right out the gate, and this might be controversial to some people, I'm actually not a fan of Force Awakens or Rogue One. Given all the problems that were with the prequels, I had high expectations for these movies and was hoping that by taking the franchise away from George Lucas, you would actually put the property in the hands of people who would actually take the franchise to a different level. Unfortunately, in my opinion, I don't think they successfully did that. In particular, with Force Awakens, I didn't connect with any of the characters. There was a ton of action sequences in it. None of them were particularly memorable or added to the story in any significant way. I was just really disappointed by the fact that it pretty much felt like a remake of Episode 4. I was really disappointed with Rogue One. I felt like Jean Erso, who is played by Felicity Jones, pretty much feels like a passenger in her own movie. Like, she doesn't really feel like she's driving the story forward in everything she does. There's a lot of plot holes and bad writing in some of these movies that I feel like they've hidden well because these movies go at such a fast pace that you kind of like don't think about it while you're watching it. But then like after you sit down and sort of think about everything that you've just seen, you just sort of start, feeling that like some things don't quite add up. This is going to be a little controversial, but I actually rank Force Awakens and Rogue One lower than the prequels. I actually enjoy the prequels more than them. So that's where I'm coming from.
I only know one truth. It's time for the Jedi to end.
Star Wars The Last Jedi. And basically I'm just gonna give general impressions for now, but overall, I thought The Last Jedi was a huge disappointment. And I will get into more details, into my reasons why. But I was very disappointed with some of the choices that were made and some of the character actions. Now, I just want to start by talking about the positives of this movie. Daisy Ridley and Mark Hamill, they do such a good job with their performance. Like, Daisy Ridley in particular is just spellblinding. Like, she's so animatic, she's so captivating to watch. She has such a great screen presence. And it's really hard to take your eyes off her. I think she really anchors this movie with her central performance. And I think she's really, really good. Mark Hamill is amazing in the movie. I thought he slips into the role of Luke Skywalker so easily, sort of like Harrison Ford did with Han Solo, that it was really fun watching him being back in this role again. And I think that the heart of the Star Wars movies really is Luke. I think both of these actors do such a good job. Unfortunately, I don't think the material really matched the performance they were giving. Like, Mark Hamill was just like, I had a lot of problems with his character, but I'll get into that later. Poe Dameron, I thought, had a much, much bigger role to play in the story. I didn't like where the character ended up towards the end, but I felt like Oscar Isaac was given a lot to do. He had a lot of really fun, show-stopping scenes in the movie. The other positive thing I want to say about The Last Jedi, I thought the humor was really good. It was very funny. I found a lot of the jokes and the laughs very organic to the story. It didn't feel like it came out of left field. My audience, they reacted the most during the funny scenes. There was a lot of laughs, there was a lot of moments of levity, which was really good. And the last two good things I'll say before I launch into a tirade of why I was really disappointed with this movie is that I think there are two set pieces in the movie that are absolutely amazing. The opening set piece is a space battle that I thought was incredible. It was, shot really well. It looked amazing. All the effects were incredible. They balanced humor, they balanced action, intensity, suspense really well in that opening scene. Poe Dameron gets to shine during it, which was kind of cool. And the second, and possibly the best thing in the film, was the epic lightsaber battle in the third act, which I think ranks as like one of the best set pieces in the Star Wars franchise. I feel like it's kind of too late because you had to wait about an hour and 45 minutes before you get to that set piece. But when that set piece happened, that lightsaber battle in the third act was so awesome that I was like, why wasn't the entire movie as good as this? Like, it was really amazing. It was really well shot. The lighting, the costuming, the colors in that lightsaber battle was really well done. There were lots of really wide, long takes to showcase the choreography of the lightsaber duels. And yeah, that for me was like the best part of the movie. So those are the positives. So now for the negatives. Whew. All right, let me take a drink before I talk about that. This movie is a huge mess. It is just all over the place. I thought the pacing of this movie is really slow. There's a really awesome set piece at the start, but then there's long stretches of nothing happening. One of the biggest problems that I had with this movie was that, and this is in all the trailers, is that Rey goes to the island to meet Luke Skywalker, right? They spent way too much time on that island. The thing is, not a lot got accomplished. Essentially, she goes there and she gets trained. Luke Skywalker is pretty much he's pretty much Yoda in that scene, and Rey is like Luke, where she receives like training from Luke Skywalker. I don't even know if she actually experienced any training. We spent almost 45 minutes on that island. That was where the movie really slowed down for me. And then there was an entire subplot involving Finn and this new character Rose, played by Kelly Mary Tran, that's completely unnecessary. They go to this place, they have to do something. The outcome of their storyline just has absolutely no results whatsoever. You could completely cut their storyline and you would have shaved off like 20 minutes of the movie. I thought there were way too many characters that were introduced in this movie. They took away so much of the screen time away from the characters that we already know. There's a character that was played by Laura Dern, and she's a character that's new, that's introduced in this movie, and she gets a complete arc. She gets like an entire storyline. And there were moments where they were going for like an emotional moment with her, and my audience had absolutely no reaction whatsoever to this character because we didn't know her. I don't know who she is. They don't bother to explain what she's doing there. And I'm like, why are you giving all these storylines to this character when there were several characters that were already there that you could have just given that storyline to? There's a character played by Benicio del Toro acting weird, and large swaths of runtime being dedicated to him. Yeah, and because of these characters, like a lot of our existing characters get sidelined. Like Finn, I feel like it was sidelined. Like they don't really do a lot with him in this movie. Poe gets a really wonderful introduction in the movie, and then he gets sidelined for like 30 to 40 minutes. Princess Leia, there's not a lot of screen time for her as well. So it's like, there's just so many things going on. And then there's, Snoke, who, plays a major part in this movie. But his character is so similar to the Emperor in the original trilogy that I was like, this just feels so repetitive and so boring. Like, I've already seen this before, and there is an encounter towards the end that really, really felt like the scene towards the end of Return of the Jedi, where Luke Skywalker meets the Emperor with Darth Vader accompanying him. And one of the reasons why I didn't enjoy this movie was because I felt like there were plots that were lifted almost whole cloth from Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. Like, The Force Awakens has been accused of completely remaking Episode 7, and The Last Jedi kind of makes the same mistakes as well, in that like there were certain characters, certain storylines that felt like they've already been done before, and it really does feel like they're recycling a lot of the same things from the original trilogy. Yeah, this Snoke character, they don't explain where he came from, what is his fascination with Kylo Ren, and it's just, he's being treated as this big bad, and then like, I don't even know what his goal, his motivation is. There was so much going on in this movie, and this movie was so long. I've never done this in a Star Wars movie before, but I was actually looking at my watch, and there was a point in the movie that I thought, alright, this is where the movie is going to end. And there was actually another half an hour left to go. And there was actually another set piece that was about to happen. Oh, wait, this is a battle? This is a battle happening? Oh, I didn't realize that. And it was just really confusing. My biggest problem is the way they ruined and completely butchered Luke Skywalker's character. And what I mean by that is that, like, prior to the movie, I've watched so many videos and read so many articles about Mark Hamill saying how he was in a huge disagreement with Rian Johnson, the director, about the direction of his character.
When I read 8, I told Ryan, I fundamentally disagree with virtually everything you've decided about my character. When I read 7, I said, I love everybody's part except mine. And on this one, it was similar in the sense that I said to Ryan, I'm so surprised how you see Luke.
I've had trouble accepting what he saw for Luke. But again, I mean, I have to say, having seen the movie, I was wrong.
Challenge for me was Luke Skywalker, you know, because he, as you can see from the poster, he looms large over this movie.
I think the world of Rian Johnson. I said to him, I totally disagree with what you think about Luke.
Figuring out where does it make sense for his head to be at, figuring out what part he was going to play in this film, that for me was kind of the big gorilla of this movie.
Luke says, it's time for the Jedi to end. Huh?
Once I cracked that, then I felt like, okay, I think now we can get into it and tell our story.
How could this happen? What could have happened to this guy that he would wind up the most hopeful, optimistic guy, now this bitter old cynic?
The Luke Skywalker that is in this movie is not the Luke Skywalker that we know and love. And it's really disappointing because everything that Luke Skywalker does in this movie feels like a betrayal of the character that we know from the original trilogies. There are so many things that he does that makes absolutely no sense, knowing what his character is and how George Lucas has established him in the original trilogy. And I'm simultaneously bored and frustrated at the direction that they're taking Luke Skywalker. There is a point in the movie where he does something that is completely out of character for Luke Skywalker that I was just kind of like, what the heck is going on? Like, they've completely ruined, you know, the hero of my childhood. And I know they were trying to go darker with this movie, but they were going darker in the expense of this character, who is pretty much the heart of the Star Wars franchise. Even the reasons for him disappearing, they talked about his disappearance and why he's vanished. It felt like there was a huge event that happened that led to Luke Skywalker becoming the way he is. And they don't even do a good job of explaining what that happened. A lot of that information is conveyed through flashbacks. I feel like they should have dedicated at least 10 to 15 minutes of recreating the event that caused, you know, Luke Skywalker to become the way he is. But we don't really get that. We just get a lot of like really cheap flashbacks to explain why he is what he is. And then the movie expects us to understand where he's coming from. This doesn't work, you know? Because in my mind, I'm like, Luke Skywalker would never do this. It is like when you were watching The Dark Knight Rises, which is the third movie in the Christopher Nolan Batman trilogy. And then Batman disappears for 8 years. He retires as Batman, but he also gives up as Bruce Wayne. And it's the same thing where you're watching this movie, you're like, Batman would never do that. Like, Bruce Wayne would be fighting crime till the end of his days. Like, he would never retire. And if he was going to retire as Batman, he would never retire as Bruce Wayne. And when you're watching The Dark Knight Rises and he's given up the Batman, he's given up the cowl because his girlfriend died, and you're watching the movie going, wait, I thought your parents died. This is the reason why you became Batman. And you stopped becoming Batman because your girlfriend died and you moped around for 8 years. That was the exact feeling that I got with Luke Skywalker in this movie. It's like, what, this shit happened and then you gave up the entire Jedi Order and you just vanish? It's like, it makes no sense. I feel like after watching The Last Jedi, it really does feel like The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, they're starting to become like the Hobbit movies to the Star Wars franchise, in that like there's not enough material to warrant, a trilogy of movies. Just like The Hobbit, which is based on like one book and they made 3 movies of. It kind of really feels that way with Force Awakens and The Last Jedi. Unlike Empire Strikes Back, unlike The Two Towers in The Lord of the Rings, The Last Jedi doesn't feel like the second book or the second movie of a trilogy. It really feels like the second act of a story that is incomplete. With the other movies, with A New Hope, you get the sense that this is a new chapter. They completed that chapter, and then there's a passage of time, and then you have the sequel, which has an entirely new story. These movies feel very self-contained. The Last Jedi isn't that. The Last Jedi feels very episodic. It's pretty much a continuation of the events that happen in The Force Awakens. The problem with these new Star Wars movies is that it very much is made as a trilogy in mind. Like, it's made with like knowing that there's going to be a sequel, and I think that's the problem. And when you compare it to some of the best movie franchises of all time, like The Godfather, The Dark Knight, the Spider-Man movies, the X-Men movies, Batman Begins is a movie that stands on its own and has a complete ending, and then there is a passage of time, and then you have The Dark Knight, which is like a completely brand new story that expands the world of Batman Begins. And then also you have like Spider-Man, Spider-Man 2 essentially has a new villain, a new story, a new adventure for Peter Parker as Spider-Man. And then also you have the X-Men movies. The X-Men is about introducing the X-Men in the first movie, and then the second movie, they have a bigger conflict and they explore some of the characters' backstories, but they always sort of feel like its own self-contained story. So I just want to talk about the audience reaction in my theater. I just want to say that my audience was very, very quiet during the movie. Like, they didn't really respond to a lot of things that were going on, and there were a lot of lulls in the movie, especially in the first half where nothing happened. And because the storyline was riffing on, plot lines that have already been explored in Empire and Return of the Jedi, so you can definitely sense that the audience was getting a little bit restless and just starting to be like, all right, where is this going now? We need to get to the next thing. It's very unfortunate that my audience didn't really react to the movie. There's at least 2 or 3 really incredible fan service moments or shocking moments that elicited absolutely no response from my audience whatsoever. That is a problem. The movie is not doing its job if even the most shocking or surprising moments, which fans would normally react to, and your audience is just not reacting to it. Yeah, so those are my overall thoughts on the movie. I rate Star Wars The Last Jedi 3 out of 10. I was really disappointed by it. I thought it didn't live up to the expectations. I felt like Force Awakens raised a lot of questions and kept a lot of the characters mysterious, that I felt like this sequel had the unfair burden of having to, fill in all the gaps. They simultaneously raised a few questions themselves that I felt like weren't satisfactorily answered by the end of the movie. So yeah, I consider The Force Awakens and Rogue One to be the worst of the Star Wars movies. And if someone told me to rank them, I don't even know that I would say that The Last Jedi is better than Force Awakens, because there were some good things in it, but I feel like the cons outweigh the pros, and I think there's just way too much mistakes in this movie to really say that it's good. Overall, I just felt like there was so many missed opportunities. I don't think there's going to be a lot of repeat viewings with this movie. There are long stretches in the film that are unpleasant to sit through, not because it's hard to watch or anything like that, but more just there's a lot of lulls, and it's just incredibly boring, and there's a lot of things that didn't happen, and whatever storyline that was happening on screen were just stuff that we've already seen done better in the original trilogy. So I hope you guys enjoyed this review. I do want to get into spoilers, so I will talk about spoilers right now. So if you haven't seen the movie, feel free to stop watching. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel at Kim and Haven, and I appreciate you guys for watching. Alright, hey guys, we're in the spoiler territory right now, so I'm just gonna talk about the stuff that happens towards the end of the movie. So I want to talk about Luke Skywalker. Like, I talked about how much I was really disappointed with where they went with this character. One thing that he did in this movie that really felt out of character for him. Basically, what Luke Skywalker did was that he wanted to kill Kylo Ren because he felt like the dark side was so strong in Kylo Ren that he couldn't resist drawing out his lightsaber and attempting to kill Kylo Ren in his sleep. Which, for me, was such a huge betrayal of Luke Skywalker as a character. I feel like they've established in the other movies that Luke Skywalker is the kind of guy who sees the good in people, and he would never give them up. We've seen how he did that with his father. Like, he knew that his father had joined the dark side, but he remained hopeful and faithful, believing that his dad would eventually turn from the dark side to the light side, and that is his arc. In the original trilogy, Luke Skywalker conquered the light side by convincing his dad to turn away from the dark side. So when you have this movie where he basically resorts to the fear of the dark side and he wants to end it, and he will do it by killing another person, it's just... oh, they got it so wrong. Like, Luke would never do that. The worst thing is, this is not just some random guy we're talking about. Like, this is Han Solo's son. We're talking about Kylo Ren, who is Ben Solo. And he wanted, like, did the thought cross his mind that the person that he wanted to kill was the son of his best friend? Why? Yes, the dark side may be strong in him, but that is your best friend's son. Why would you even consider raising your lightsaber against him? It's just... I'm just stunned. I'm just stunned that they decided to go with that decision. The other things that I didn't like about his character is that he was pretty much just moping around. Like, Luke Skywalker decided to vanish because he provoked Kylo Ren and turned Ben Solo into Kylo Ren. He felt responsible for that. And so he's been so wrapped up in his guilt that he's decided to vanish to this island, completely isolated and wanting to die on this island alone. For 30 to 40 minutes of the runtime, Rey is on this island trying to convince him to come back and help the Resistance, to help his sister. And it's like, this doesn't feel like Luke Skywalker. Like, we're talking about the Luke Skywalker who went to Dagobah to train with Yoda to become a Jedi, and who abandoned his training because he had to go save his friends. The fact that there is a crisis that's happening in the universe, and the crisis involves his sister, and his sister is in danger, and he chooses to maroon himself on this island, is just the biggest betrayal of the Skywalker character. It's just not interesting to watch because there's so much back and forth between Rey and Luke Skywalker. Luke Skywalker is like, yeah, I'll help you. No, I can't. And then the training with Rey, 40 minutes is spent on this island, and the only training she has is that she sits on a rock and closes her eyes. And that's it. Like, that's the only training she received from Luke Skywalker before she leaves, before she does the Luke thing and leaves to go save her friends. And I'm like, what? And also, I was talking about how there was this awesome lightsaber battle at the end of the movie. Kylo Ren assassinates Snoke, and the both of them have this awesome lightsaber battle with the royal guards defending Emperor Snoke. However, it made no sense because Rey was doing all these lightsaber moves that I was like, how did she learn how to use the lightsaber in such a skilled way? She's taking out all these guys, she's doing all these moves. When you really think about it, she didn't learn any fighting skills when she was on that island. She just freaking kicks everybody's ass. What the hell? They didn't really answer a lot of the questions that were raised about her background. They kind of talked about her lineage a little bit, that her parents just sold her as a kid and abandoned her, essentially. She was thinking that her parents were these important people and she was trying to look for them. And that's like one part of the puzzle that's fixed, but the movie doesn't really explain why she's so strong with the Force, why she's so powerful, why she's so good at doing everything that she does. That is kind of still unexplained. We're 2 years away from Force Awakens and they still haven't really resolved the mystery surrounding her. And that's, I thought, was incredibly dissatisfying. Luke Skywalker shows up, has a scene with Princess Leia that only lasts for like 2 minutes. You've got two of the most iconic characters in this movie, and they never interacted once. All the characters are so busy, getting the plot along and trying to resolve things, that there really like isn't a lot of time for these characters to really hang out and just catch up with each other, which is something that I feel like in the original trilogy we always had these characters, talking to each other, getting to know each other, and there was a lot of fun banter between the two of them. And Luke Skywalker doesn't even get 5 minutes with his sister. So disappointing, because in the last movie, Luke never saw Han Solo. Their relationship as friends is like one of the most memorable friendships in the Star Wars movies. And I just think it was a missed opportunity to not have Luke meet Han Solo and Luke not spending enough time with Princess Leia. Some of you guys might have felt this, but Luke Skywalker faces Kylo Ren in a final lightsaber battle, and it is revealed that Luke Skywalker was using a Force illusion to face Kylo Ren. And when that moment happened, when that moment was revealed that he was doing that, I was like, wait, has this power been established in this universe before? Have we seen any Jedis use this Force illusion? That really took me out of the movie, because I felt like they introduced a power for Luke Skywalker that was completely unexplained. And here's the weird thing. He dies after that. So he basically dies like Obi-Wan Kenobi style, where his robe just sort of falls to the ground and he vanishes. And I'm thinking to myself, like, if he is using so much energy and power to create a Force illusion to face off against Kylo Ren, why doesn't he just show up at the battle himself and just do the same thing where Kylo Ren's about to cut him down and his robe just falls to the ground and he vanishes? Like, if you're going to do the Obi-Wan death for Luke Skywalker, then just do it. Don't introduce this new power that has never been established in the universe of the Star Wars movies, and just have him die the same way that Obi-Wan Kenobi dies anyway. It's like so inefficient, and you're just introducing another element to this story that has never been explained. It's confusing. I don't understand what's going on there, so I thought that was really bad. Finn and Rose has like a romance towards the end, which I'm like, I'm all for interracial romance in movies, but that kind of felt like it came out of nowhere. Captain Phasma comes back in this movie. Captain Phasma, they introduced this badass, silver chrome stormtrooper character who is, a towering, intimidating figure played by Gwendolyn Christie, who plays Brienne in Game of Thrones, but they didn't give her anything to do. Once again, completely wasted. And then obviously Snoke dies in this movie. Out of all the twists and the turns, I thought that the Snoke death was for me the biggest one, because it was like, I thought this was going to be the big bad, the Emperor of this new trilogy, and the fact that they just got rid of him like that was kind of cool, except because we don't know much about his character, we don't know where he's coming from, we don't know why he's the Emperor, we don't know why he has such a fascination for Rey and Kylo Ren, that when he died, even though it was a shocking moment, I felt like a lot of dramatic impact wasn't really there, because we don't know who this person is, and so we're not rooting for his downfall, and we're not rooting for his comeuppance. I give Rian Johnson a lot of props for killing off this character who I thought they were building up as the big bad, and they've completely shifted that towards Kylo Ren. They introduced this thing where he has like some sort of connection with Rey, and that they're able to connect with each other, and they don't even explain that, how they like are connected in some way through the Force. Maybe she is the light side and he represents the dark side, and he's like trying to tempt her to join him. All that stuff I thought was, yeah, it was alright, it was okay. The last thing I'll talk about in spoilers is basically there's a moment where Leia gets blown out of space, and she, you know, we've seen movies where people get blown out of space without a helmet on, and these characters die instantly and immediately, you know, is frozen. And so when Princess Leia got thrown out of space, I thought that's it, she died. And the thing is, because the movie was so dissatisfying at that moment, that when she got thrown out of space, there was no reaction from my audience whatsoever. They were like silent, zip. One of the most iconic characters in the Star Wars universe gets thrown out in space and potentially was gonna die, and nobody gasped, nobody was like, oh no, nobody said anything. My audience in a packed theater was just silent. I was like, oh, this is bold, they're gonna kill Princess Leia now. And then no, she just kind of uses the force pulls herself back into a ship. And that moment for me was kind of like, oh yeah, it's kind of cool, but you know, that kind of stretched a little bit of credibility for me, really. Like, you can do that. I've seen a lot of movies where people, you know, die instantly in space. So that moment was kind of weird for me. A lot of the characters got separated during this movie that I was kind of like, well, we waited for 2 years. Everybody talks about how much they love Finn and love Rey and love Poe. And the weird thing is we never got to see like Finn and Rey like interact throughout this movie. Like, they don't get to share a scene together right up to the end. And I felt like there was so many missed opportunities to really like, you know, just get to hang out with them. Yeah, so that's it for spoilers. If you guys disagree with me, you know, please leave comments in the comment section. And yeah, thank you guys for watching. Have a great day, and I'll see you all later. Bye.